الصالحين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا بما ينفعنا وزدنا علما يقربنا منك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا جئت سهلا سهلا. اللهم أعذنا من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا وأصلح لنا شأننا كله لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. وبعد فقال الإمام حجة الإسلام الغزالي رحمه الله ونفعنا به وبكم. I think we got down there, isn't it?
Last thing it was the hadith of the Prophet.
وعن سليمان الخواس لو أن رجلا توكل على الله سبحانه بصدق النية لاحتاج إليه الأمراء فمن دونهم كيف يحتاج ومولاه والغني الحميد. What do you have in your Arabic?
وعن سليمان الخواس أن رجلا توكل على الله سبحانه بصدق النية. I don't have the two dots here, but probably it's النية. لاحتاج إليه الأمراء ومن دونهم وكيف يحتاج مولاه الغني الحميد.
So it doesn't really that make sense, doesn't it? So, do you have the Arabic one?
Why doesn't it?
لاحتاج إليه الأمراء فمن دونهم.
لا ومن دونهم.
ومن دونهم.
وكيف يحتاج مولاه الغني الحميد.
You know what I mean? What do you understand? What?
That means the Umara and everyone's below them will need this person, so he will be like sufficient. I mean, he doesn't.
What about the next bit?
He doesn't. Yeah. How then he's going to be in need of anyone, and then Allah is.
فكيف يحتاج ومولاه الغني الحميد. How does he need anyone? Because he has got Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Doesn't seem to fit in anyway, the two parts of that. You know, the two parts don't fit in. You know? Well, it's just, it can still make sense, but they don't fit in the two parts of that sentence. So it says Sulaiman al-Khawas, he said, if a man truly trusts in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everyone will be in need of him, but he will be in need of no one. Maybe we can put it that way. He doesn't need anyone because he has got Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is al-Ghani al-Hamid, who is the one, al-Ghani, the one who has got everything, doesn't need anything. وعن إبراهيم الخواس قال لقيت غلاما في التيه كأنه سبيكة فضة قلت إلى أين يا غلام؟ قال إلى مكة. قلت بلا زاد ولا راحلة؟ فقال يا ضعيف اليقين الذي يقدر على حفظ السماوات والأرض يقدر عن أن يوصلني إلى مكة بلا زاد ولا راحلة. Ibrahim al-Khawas, one of the scholars or people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he once told a story. He said, once I was in like a desert, and I met a boy in the desert, and I asked him, where are you going? He said, I'm going to Mecca. And Ibrahim al-Khawas saw that this person had no provision with him, no riding transport, no food, nothing with him. And he's in a massive open desert, and he's saying, I'm going to Mecca. So he said to him, you have got nothing, no provision, no transport. And the boy said to him, oh, you weak of certainty. And this is one of the awliya that he's talking to, Ibrahim al-Khawas. He said to him, oh, you weak of certainty. So on. The one who is able to take care of the heavens and the earth is able to take care of me, that I can reach Mecca without any provision and without any transport. فَلَمَّا دَخَلْتُ مَكَّةَ فَإِذَا هُوَ فِي الطَّوَافِ يَقُولُ. When Ibrahim then himself reached Mecca, because he was also heading for Mecca, he saw the same boy going around in Tawaf. And the boy was reciting these verse of poetry. يا نفس صيحي عبدا ولا تحبي أحدا إلا الجليل الصمد يا نفس موتي كمدا. The boy was reciting these lines of poetry. O nafs, roam around forever, and do not love anyone except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Jalil al-Samada. O nafs, die in grief, die grieving. So in other words, this idea of this boy who is completely detached from the dunya. Completely detached from the dunya and only attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فلما رآني قال يا شيخ أنت بعد على ذلك ضعف من اليقين. The boy saw Shaykh Ibrahim, and he said to him, "Oh Shaykh, do you still have that weak certainty? Are you still having that weak yaqeen?" These are just examples of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides people and teaches people. Someone like the Shaykh Ibrahim al-Khawas, he's one of the awliya. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made him meet this boy. It says boy, but probably young man, to teach him further, to take him to further higher levels of yaqeen and tawakkul. So this is why when we started this whole discussion, we said Imam al-Ghazali here, rahimahullah, this is not now focusing on people who are at the beginning of their journey, spiritual journey. This is now focusing on people who have made some mujahada. They've overcome those first stages of making tawbah, fighting against their nafs, the shaitan, getting themselves away, secluding themselves to some extent from socializing too much with company that's not conducive to their iman. And what was the fourth one? The love of the world. So they've gone through those initial obstacles, which are very difficult in themselves. So then these people, so this is an example of Ibrahim al-Khawas, he's one of the awliya. He's gone through those stages now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts guiding him to meet these people. And then we have the amazing story of Musa alayhi salam in the Quran. Where Musa alayhi salam, being one of the greatest messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he, at that time when the Bani Israel asked him who was the most knowledgeable person in the world, and he said to them, I am. Because that was actually what you would expect, as him being the one of the ulil azmi min ar-rusul, one of the greatest 5 of all prophets and messengers, the only one of them that was alive on the earth at that time. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the revelation that no, Musa, there's someone who has got more knowledge than you. So then obviously the story of Musa and Khidr in the Quran, which takes place and shows us how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when people make a struggle in His path and for His sake, and they go through this what we call mujahada, the real struggle to put down the desires of their own nafs, their own appetites, to put away the love of the world from their heart, to spend their time remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take it upon Himself to guide them further and further along the path. And the path has no end. Path has no end. If there was an end, the Prophet ﷺ would have reached the end. And there's no end because there's no end to perfection. That's why they say about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself, every day his ranks are increasing. Every day his perfection is increasing. Meaning, whenever we do salawat, like we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on him, Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi, etc. Every time we do something, it increases him. Otherwise there would be no benefit for us to make dua for him or ask Allah to have mercy on him, all these things. But it does have an effect. So every time, all of his ummah, millions and millions, billions of people doing salawat and things, it's always increasing him. But that's why the scholar said it's not because he's imperfect and he becomes more perfect, but he is perfect, but he's in an increase in perfection. There's no limits to that journey. So none of us will ever get to the point. None of us will ever reach that the rank of the prophets themselves. So that's why the journey for us has got no end. It's an ongoing journey. But at this point, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He takes it upon Himself to take these people, to guide them. So He will send people to them. And these people who are on that journey, they will take lessons. They will take lessons, they will learn from the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to them. That's why one of them, they said, we look for wisdom, The wisdom is, like the Prophet said, wisdom is the lost property of the mu'min. So you look for wisdom wherever it may come to you. It may come through sometimes even non-Muslims. Like Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, one of our teachers, said to us once, all the people you meet in your life, they are the rizq that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. If you think about it, all of us, we've got certain people that we meet. Out of the 7 billion people on the earth, there's a certain number of those people, a limited number, maybe, I don't know how many, few hundred or something, that are people that are part of our experience. So those people are those that Allah has decreed for us to be part of our lives. So the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they recognize, they understand this, Whoever you come across, whoever you meet, this is someone that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has programmed to be there at that time and that place. And whatever that person says or does is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has programmed for him to do or say at that time. So they're taking lessons, they're learning. So they're in that state, that frame, of where they're seeing everything is happening by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they're able to then learn from everything that takes place. And then so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides them, as you saw in the story of Ibrahim al-Khawas. So this is the maqam that Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah is explaining to us, and then trying to take us to maqam al-tawakkul, the station of reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These people who used to wander around in the desert, like this boy, Now obviously that's not our deen. Our deen is not to go and wander around with no food or drink and just rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this is a very powerful training for people to get tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if it's a stage that someone goes through, it's extremely powerful. Imagine if you just went out in some huge massive desert or huge massive place with no food, no drink, anything. And you just said, I trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you start wandering in that desert. And you saw day by day that you were given your rizq, which you would be. You're guaranteed to be given your rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as you had that tawakkul on Him. Then imagine what a strong lesson that would be to you for the rest of your life. Even later on when you go back to your normal existence of having a family or whatever, that lesson has been strongly carved into you. So this is why often you see the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala go through different stages of what they call saluk, the journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they learn these different things and they learn and come to these different maqams. And for those people who make the intention and make the journey, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be making those opportunities come out for them. If someone says, I trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then give that person that opportunity, a test.
Can I ask you a question? So, I mean, that's from the point of view of the one who came back to tell the story, but somebody could go and walk in the desert and die in the desert, and that's the end of the ajal, isn't it? So, in terms of what it's a quite a extreme story to tell people like us that this man went into the desert because of his spiritual state, and this is how he learned his lesson because Allah SWT provided for him. But we didn't hear the stories of the people who went and died in the desert because he did that, if there are such people.
There are no people who died in the desert, except if someone went there expecting that they would die, they probably would.
Yeah.
So this person went there expecting, fully convinced that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to provide for him, so he did. So it's to do with your state that you go into the thing. The person who thought that he would probably die wouldn't have done it anyway. This is something that, it is a very subtle point, but the person who would do something like this is someone who has got tawakkul. And then they would be provided for.
Would he do that because like for example his spiritual training demanded that this was done at the moment, or why would he do that?
Well, it could be two things. One is the person is in that state himself, and he just says he's got such a sense of tawakkul has come upon him that he just goes out. Or it could be that his sheikh or his guide has told him, look, you have to go and live in the mountain and don't take any money with you and just trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it could happen two ways. It's like Khalid ibn al-Walid, rahimahullah, when one of the non-Muslim, he said to him, okay, if you really believe in this dua that you're making, because you're saying, Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru ma'asmihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. In the name of Allah, in whose name nothing can harm you in the heaven and the earth. So he said, if you really believe in that, then drink this poison. So Khalid ibn al-Walid, he made the dua and he drank the poison. And it didn't harm him. Now, someone like me wouldn't do that. I wouldn't drink the poison. Why? Because I'm not on that level of tawakkul that he was on at that time. So that's the whole thing, Someone like me, if I drank it, maybe I would have died, I don't know. But that's the thing, it's the person's state of tawakkul at the time.
The other question is, some of the stories in the book are related to, when it says about rizq, it seems to me, from what I've read in English, is that it's mainly around your physical sustenance, like your food and drink, and not necessarily around other things like money, clothing, or things which are, not necessarily. So what I've understood, which maybe is wrong, is that the actual rizq which is necessary to continue doing ibadat, like just physically have strength and things like that, the minimum you need to live and to, breathe, etc. Not, for example, your house, your car, your other broader non-essential needed or non-essential things that you may use. Is that also included in the rizq that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises to people who want to rely upon Him, or is it? Do you know what I mean? So because that makes a difference in how you approach your life.
Yeah.
If you think that you need a certain amount of money to bear your expenses and to do what you want to do with your family, etc., is different to the amount that you personally need to live and survive. Do you see the difference? So I just wasn't clear. I was always under the impression that whatever we've got that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, that is our rizq. But is there another concept which is that, for the ones who rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's the bare minimum?
No, I don't think there's any concept like that.
Meaning, like, say if you've got a lot of money and a nice house and nice car, etc., that was your rizq, regardless of which way you chose. Do you see? Or is it that you have been guaranteed enough to survive until your ajal is finished, so that you can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but not necessarily having these things which are variable according to other factors?
No, I mean, the thing is, what you're probably falling into is a slight, obviously, that philosophical type of issue of free will and predestination. If you're going to it at that level, I mean, you won't come to any resolution rationally, because it's not resolvable rationally. It's something which is Imam al-Tahawi rahimahullah in the Aqidah, he says this issue, of the qadr and the free will, has never been revealed even to the greatest prophet or the greatest angel. It's one of the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like His attributes, which none of us can understand rationally or with our minds. We can never encompass Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes. So the issue of free will, and we were speaking about the other day, you mentioned Shaykh Nuh, I think, was it that he wrote something about that recently, or was that something else?
No, that was suffering. Yeah, similar. Suffering.
Oh, so why is there suffering on the predestination free will issue is also, I mean, it's one of those things that human reason is never going to grasp. It's like one of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's linked to the attributes. It's linked to the attribute of qudra, power. So any of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never be able to completely grasp them, So this is where you may be, if you think too deeply about this issue, you may come into that sort of abyss. But as Imam Shaykh Hamza once mentioned, the issue of the predestination is not resolvable rationally, but it is resolved through a spiritual basira, So that's where we have to look for the resolution of it, in a sense. But the point here is the rizq is fixed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think if we read on, actually, it will become more apparent, because Imam al-Ghazali does deal with it very well, actually. But there is a point also to be made that as Muslims, I mean, if once we start reading some of these things, that the rizq is fixed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's promised to give the rizq. In fact, let's read on and then we'll just explain as we go along a bit more. He says, قال أبو مطيع لحاتم الأصم بلغني أنك تقطع المفازل بالتوكل من غير ذات. So Muti', he said to Hatim al-Asam, one of the great awliya, he says, I have been told that you are going across large open spaces like deserts, etc., just relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without taking any provision with you. Now, once again, this is you're right to say this is a bit controversial, and as I said, this is not what Islam tells us to do. But it's simply a stage, and sometimes it just comes, the person is in that state, out of his own control. He's just in a state of complete tawakkul. It's what sometimes the Sufis call fana. Fana is related to that tawakkul. Within the state of fana, the person sees nothing but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His actions. So if a person comes into that state, it's not through his own making. It's just something that overcomes him, and he would then just walk out somewhere without any. He doesn't need provision in that state. Someone who's not in that state won't do that. That's what I'm trying to say. Someone who's not in the state of Khalid ibn Walid is not going to drink the poison. They're going to say, look, it's not for me to test Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's actually the Sharia position. It's not for us to test Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't drink the poison and say, I'm testing Allah, let's see if it works or something like that. Like the story of Isa alayhi salam. When Shaitan, Iblis, he came to Isa alayhi salam and he said to him, just paraphrasing my own words now, you say you trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he said, yes. He said, then throw yourself over the cliff. If you really truly believe that only Allah, the ajal come when He decrees it. And Isa alayhi salam said to him, it's not for the slave to test the Lord, it's for the Lord to test the slave. That's our position, the Sharia position. That's where we normally live our normal lives. So this is like not the normal, to go out without any provision into deserts or mountains. But it is a state that can overcome someone. And it could, these states can last for minutes, hours, days, weeks, different for different people.
And was he going for some purpose? Was he going to Makkah or was he going?
Probably for Hajj.
Then that is explainable.
But to go without any provision, without any food, without any transport. Obviously the likelihood would be, in normal means, you would die. But then they trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the, Like we're not told to do that. It's not our deen. It's not our sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ, we don't just head off for Hajj with no food or transport. We make sure we have provision. But if someone is overcome by this state, where he sees nothing but the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he may head out. He's not going to ask anyone, and no one's going to stop him or anything like that. It's not like that's just a state he's in at that time. And like I said, the other one would be where the Shaykh has told the person to go, and that's part of then just the training of that person, that the Shaykh wants him to learn and get that maqam of tawakkul.
What about if you went out and was begging along the way?
What about it?
Is that okay?
It's not a case of being okay or not, like I said, Begging along the way. Allah, I don't know. So Muti said to Hatim, I heard that you are doing this, you're going in these places without taking any provision. قال حاتم زادي 4 أشياء. قال ما هي? Hatim, he said, my provision is 4 things. So Muti said to him, what are they? قال أرى الدنيا والآخرة مملكة لله عز وجل. He said, I see that the whole dunya and the akhirah are possessions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وأرى الخلق كلهم عبيد الله وعياله. And I see all of creation are the slaves of Allah and His family, so to speak, or metaphorically. In other words, He's their Lord. He's their Rabb. وأرى الأرزاق والأسباب كلها بيد الله. I see all provision and all means, all causes are in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وأرى الخلق كلهم وأرى القضاء الله نافذا في جميع أرض الله. I see that the qada of Allah, the decree of Allah, is being implemented in all of the creation. So this is the thing I was trying to say. At that time, he's seeing things like that. That person in that state is going to do that. Like Sayyidina Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu mentioned about him in the Khulafa by Imam al-Sayyuti, that once Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu was walking down a road and there was a huge commotion and people were running and panicking, and he was with some companions and they said, what's going on? And they said, there's a lion, a wild lion further down the path. that's blocking the path from the people. So Ibn Umar said to them, just wait here. And he walked straight up to the lion, took it by the ear and walked off the road, took him off the road. That was the state, that's that state of being in a complete, seeing that this lion, he doesn't move except by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not something that you can really, it's just something that's a state that overcomes people. Obviously it can be explained and you can understand rationally, but you can't, unless you experience it, then you experience it. As one poet said, أَرَى الزُّهَادَ فِي رَوْحٍ وَرَاحَةٍ قُلُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الدُّنْيَا مَزَاحَةٍ إِذَا أَبْصَرْتُهُمْ أَبْصَرْتُ قَوْمًا مَلُوكَ الْأَرْضِ سِيمَتُهُمْ سِمَاحًا. No one's got the English translation of it. You got English translation? You haven't found it?
Yeah, I was in here last week, but which, are you starting the fourth hurdle?
Yeah, the four hurdles.
And,
just on the first one, tawakkul, which is trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
is this one where he circumnavigates the Kaaba?
Just off a little bit after that. Just
Okay,
the
yeah,
next lines
yeah,
after.
so the poet expressed, I see the abstainers enjoying fragrance and comfort. Their hearts are far removed from this world. When you look at them, you are looking at people who are kings of the earth. They mark being tolerant.
وأما الأمر الثاني الذي يقتضى التوكل على الله سبحانه في هذا الشأن فهو ما في تركه من الخطر العظيم والأمر الكبير. He says the second issue which leads us to having tawakkul, reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this regard is if we don't have this tawakkul, then actually it becomes very dangerous, this type of tawakkul. And this is the one that is mentioned in the Quran, that we have to have this tawakkul. Yeah? So this first thing, of going out in deserts and all that, that's not something in our Sharia. But it, like I said, it's simply a state or sometimes a training. The second one is in the Sharia because it's in the Quran commanding us to have this tawakkul, and we have to have this tawakkul. So this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, خَلَقَكُمْ ثُمَّ رَزَقَكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you and then He gave you provision. It doesn't say you earned your provision yourself. And this is actually a really nice way that Imam al-Ghazali deals with this issue of from the Quran. Is amazing how it goes up in one stage after another. So at that first stage, the Quran says Allah created you and gave you rizq. فَدَلَّ أَنَّ رِزْقَ مِنَ اللَّهِ لَا غَيْرٍ كَالْخَلْقِ. This tells us clearly that the rizq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not from creation. In other words, our boss doesn't give us rizq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us rizq through him as a means. ثم لم يكتفي بالدلالة على حتى وعد فقال إن الله هو الرزاق. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it even more stronger for us, rather than just being an indication, a dalala from the previous. It's even more stronger, emphasized that He's the only one that gives rizq. So He says, إن الله هو الرزاق. Allah, He is the Razzaq. So Razzaq is the intensive form, like Allama, from Alim, Allama. Raziq, Razzaq is very intensive. He is the one who always gives. He is the one who always and only the one that gives rizq. ثم لم يكتفي بالوعد حتى ضمن. And then even further, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only He has promised us that He's the one who gives rizq, He then actually takes the daman, He actually takes the responsibility upon Himself. So it says, وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا. there is no creature upon the earth except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is responsible for its rizq. Ala Allahi rizquha. Ala means it's upon him, it's incumbent upon him, it's obligatory upon him. So in other words, nothing is obligatory upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's made it obligatory upon Himself. Just like in the Hadith Qudsi, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allah has written for Himself that His mercy is greater than His anger. Because no one can enforce that upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has put it upon Himself. And Allah is the best of those who keeps His promise. So here we see that in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put upon Himself, Illa ala Allahi rizquha. This is a very, very strong statement of rizq, on the rizq, Ma min dabatin fil ardi illa ala Allahi rizquha. Allah has taken upon Himself to provide for all of the creatures upon the earth. ثم لم يكتفي بالضمان حتى أقسم. And then Imam al-Ghazali said, even then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes even further, an even more stronger statement. And He actually makes an oath on this point. فَوَرَبِّ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ إِنَّهُ لَحَقٌّ مِثْلَ مَا أَنَّكُمْ تَنْطِقُونَ. To emphasize the previous point about the rizq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then makes an oath. He says, by the Lord of the heaven and the earth, this is surely the truth. Just as you are speaking, or just as you speak, just as certain we are that we speak, this is how certain it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given our rizq. ثم لم يكتفي بذلك كله حتى أمر بالتوكل وأبلغ وأنذر. And then Imam al-Ghazali says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even there He hasn't left it at that. He's even then commanded us to have tawakkul. Commanded, Amar, you have to do it. And warned against those that don't have tawakkul. Yeah? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ. Trust, rely upon the one who is alive and does not die. وَقَالَ سُبْحَانَهُ وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَتَوَكَّلُوا إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. So rely and trust upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you are believers. إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. If you have iman, then trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فمن لم يعتبر قوله ولم يكتفي بوعده ولم يطمئن إلى ضمانه ولم يقنع بقسمه ثم لم يبال بأمره ووعده ووعيده فانظر ماذا يكون حاله. So Imam al-Ghazali then says, look, if you, such a person who doesn't take from the Quran, he doesn't believe in the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he doesn't feel satisfied that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken this responsibility upon Himself, and he's still not satisfied even by the qasam, the taking of oath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon this, and he still doesn't even pay attention to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually promised this, has actually commanded this and warned against those who don't do this. What would be the state of such a person? So this is one of the most powerful paragraphs I've come across on this issue of tawakkul, how Imam al-Ghazali deals with it, and mashallah, it's amazing. See how he took it from one stage to the next in such a short just from the Quran. Leaves no doubt, isn't it? For anyone to have any doubts upon that.
I don't know if this is the explanation that we're waiting for, but then it's not so much philosophical thinking about it, but what does the text define about what is rizq? That's the question.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because
so rizq is all provision.
So I mean, the implication then, and maybe this is philosophical, but does that mean that what you have, everything is rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is subject to this ayah of the Quran?
Yeah.
Which means that, say for example, you're working X number of hours a week, and you're living in this X house, and that's your provision. The amount that you work, would you reduce it or increase the number of hours you work, the rizq would be the same. Now that doesn't mean that house is your rizq, obviously. That could change as well. But it's not related to the amount of work you're doing, necessarily. Is that what it means? Which means that I'm not going to take a job, necessarily, with a higher pay, which could give me more money, because it's not going to change my rizq. I'll still maybe live in this house, or a bigger house, or a smaller house. But whether I take the job and spend more of my time working is immaterial to that conclusion. So therefore, when I'm choosing to do the job, don't make that your consideration in whether you're going to take it. Is that what it means?
Well, it depends on the different aspects to that, you know. I mean, obviously here where it says, وَمَا مِن دَابَةٍ مِّن فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا. There is no creature except that Allah has taken upon himself the rizq of that. That means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will sustain and, give the rizq. That in itself doesn't necessarily mean that the rizq doesn't change. You're more in the realms of the qadar issue, which is that our rizq has been fixed. When we were the babies, in that hadith, which is sahih, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when your ruh was put into the womb, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the 4 things He put there was the rizq. When they will die, whether they will be happy or sad, and one of them was the rizq. So that's determined, that's predetermined. Now, you're saying if you work more, would you get more rizq? And it's like that, it's to do with that issue, you see. Everything is predetermined. So your decision of whether you would work more or less is already predetermined as well.
I think, isn't the issue more is that if you apply for a job or you try to and you don't get it, don't beat yourself over it.
That's definitely one aspect of it. And I think the issue is of qadr, and the issue is, I think that the practical issue is for us as Muslims, how we live our lives. Because we're never going to get to the end of the qadr and thing. So the Prophet said, "I'malu." Because one of the Sahaba said to him, if everything is already written for us, our rizq, why should we even work? And he said, no, "I'malu. فَإِنْ كُلُّكُمْ مُيَسَّرٌ لِمَا خُلِقُوا لَهُ وَبِهِ. I can't remember the exact wording of the hadith. The meaning of act. Each of you is eased towards whatever he is created for. Okay? Each of you is eased to whatever he is created for. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has predetermined that you're going to be one of his awliya, and you're going to spend your life doing mujahada and working for his deen, and you're going to have very little, and you're going to be zuhud, you're going to be zahid from the world, then you will do that. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has predetermined that you're going to be a man who's going to be running after the dunya for your whole life until you end up in your grave and realize that you wasted your time, then you will do that. But that doesn't mean we're sort of what they call fatalists or something. This is one of the things that non-Muslims sometimes often point the finger towards Muslims. They call them fatalists, these guys, no matter what happens, they just say qadar Allah. That means, they sort of they don't put in that extra effort to change things, and this is sort of looked at as a negative from the dominant Western viewpoint of the world, and actually I think it may be true to some extent, but it's not a negative, it's a positive for us. We're not people who are just completely all out interested in striving for worldly ambitions. You know, we're not. We're just not. That's not our deen. Yes, we work to get out our provision. And actually one of the things that the Tasawwuf teaches us is to have qana'ah, to be satisfied with what we have. That is actual true, that is a true ghani. The true wealthy man is the one who's just satisfied with what he has. You know, a person who has got millions or billions of pounds and they're not satisfied. They want more, like the Prophet ﷺ said. You know, the children of Adam, he will have one mountain of gold, but he will want another one. And he'll keep trying to get more and more dunya, and he will never be satisfied until his mouth is filled with the dust of his grave. This is not a wealthy man. The wealthy man is the guy who's sitting in some simple house. Like, you know, many of the teachers I studied with, you know, just very, very simple, like Shaykh Abdul Wahab in Syria, one of the sheikhs. I used to sit with him every day when I was in Damascus. Every day for 2 or 3 hours he would, you know, let us come and read with him. Very, very simple house, you know. If you go into his house, honestly, it's one of those old houses in Damascus. You know, the walls, the plaster falling off the walls, you know. Just a very simple furniture, bed he sleep on. A very small mosque that he was the Imam of. And he was actually offered, you know, the government, they said to him, we want to transfer you to a larger mosque that was being built to be the Imam, and he actually refused. But a very contented person. Very contented person. You know? He's just someone who lived his life doing seeking sacred knowledge. You know, someone who's worked and then in the evenings used to go to different masjids to sit in different majalis of ilm for 20, 30 years, just going and sitting with all the best scholars in Damascus, studying through texts of different subjects, memorized very large amounts of material, Quran and many books and poems he memorized, you know. So that's the thing. He is a truly wealthy person who is feeling just satisfied with what they have. You know? Like Sheikh Siraj in Liverpool, just live across the road from the masjid. He has a house, small house, you know. Masjid is across the road. He just 5 times a day he goes to the masjid, comes home. There's no television. None of these things that we feel that we have to have, you know, internet and latest computers and computer games and iPhones or iPads and all these things that we somehow, we get convinced that we have to have these things. He's got nothing of that. You know? Is he happy or are we happy? You know, every day he recites 5 juz of Quran because he's Hafiz of Quran, and he spends most of his spare time looking up different mas'alas or researching different things or writing articles on different things. And you know, that's the thing, just to be content. That's the practical thing that we learn. You know? Yes, I mean, you know, you could work more hours and try to get more luxuries or more things that you may feel that you need. But is that then, you know, where's that? That's the whole issue. More than anything, I think. Not a case of, you know, the rizq being fixed or not fixed. It's more an issue of that. How much we want more and more of worldly things, or how much are we just happy with what we have. Because really we don't need much, do we, if we think about it? You know, we don't need much. We need our rizq, food. I mean, the daruriyat in Sharia, food, transport, drink, shelter, clothing, you know. Those are the things that are daruriyat. Do we really need much more than that, you know? You know, you could live in a simple place, have that simple food and drink and clothing, and you could be very happy and contented. In remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in reading, reciting Quran, taking wisdom, gaining knowledge. Those are the things that bring real happiness to a person and contentment, you know.
But what is it? Hadith where the son of Adam, all he needs is a shelter and a bit of food to keep himself upright.
Yeah, a few morsels of food to keep his back straight.
Yeah.
You know? Often for us, you know, like I've said before as well, it's often a case of the husband or the father taking the lead in this as well with the family, because the nature of especially sisters tends to be they're more orientated towards material aspects. Obviously, it's not always the case. You might have a very pious sister who's very orientated towards akhirah and a very worldly husband, but the general way that people are, this is illustrated by the Sunnah itself. You know how the Prophet ﷺ, his wives, despite being the greatest of women, they asked him for some material things, you know, which led to him separating from them for 30 days. And the Quran, ayahs of Quran were revealed to them saying, if you want the luxuries of the world, then you're free to go. You know, He will free you, He will release you, He will divorce you, and you can go. You know? Or if you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the akhirah, then that's your choice. And of course they chose that, but that's just an indication to us, because the Prophet is like an example that always, this is always can be attention as well. You know? So this is why the father or the husband has to take a lead always in these type of things as well. So it says, وانتبه أي محنة تجيء من هذا وهذه والله مصيبة شديدة ونحن منها في غفلة عظيمة. So Imam al-Ghazali says, then summing up, you know, what a huge issue this is really, if you think about how the Quran has gone through these different stages of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promising our rizq. He says this is a huge thing, you know, and many people are greatly heedless of this issue. ولقد قال الصادق الأمين عليه الصلاة والسلام لابن عمر كيف يك إذا بقيت بين قوم يخبؤون رزق سنتهم لضعف اليقين. So the Prophet once said to Ibn Umar in this narration, how will it be when you find yourself amongst people who will be storing up their provision for a whole year because of their weak iman and yaqeen? Because Ibn Umar lived many years after the Prophet ﷺ. And he was one of the young of the Sahaba, so he came upon those times later on when the iman became weaker. There's once again this idea of, you know, people having lots and lots of savings, endless amount of thinking ahead, you know, in 20 years time, 30 years time, what will happen to me, you know, planning for that. Once again, we have to come to a healthy balance, you know, healthy balance about planning ahead, but also not being like people who don't have any belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah? Because we're in a materialistic culture, you know, an atheistic culture. The people, you know, this is like you have to have insurance for everything. You know? But this is just simply people of complete no tawakkul whatsoever. Yeah? Because they're atheists, or they don't, even those, you know, sometimes you find these born again Christians, they're practically atheists as far as I found. You know, they have this sort of emotional type of Sometimes they're quite loud and emotional about their religion, about Jesus, love Jesus, but really if you delve into their iman, it's very weak, I found. And then this new type of evangelical Christianity is actually very materialistic Christianity as well. There's studies being done on this, and there was a documentary about this as well. It's quite a strange form of Christianity, because Christianity traditionally was always very much extreme zuhud, even more than our deen. Our deen is a balance between being in this dunya and focusing towards the akhirah. Traditional Christianity was very, very otherworldly, very, very detached from this world, to the point where piety was thought to be of people who have no attachment to the world. They don't wear perfume, they don't take baths, they don't marry. That was considered to be the highest form of piety in Christianity. But this new what they call born again evangelical movements, this new form of Christianity, which was brought about through the work. One of the pioneers, people in that, was the guy called Schofield, who wrote a commentary on the Bible about 150 years ago. He lived, and his commentary on the Bible is the biggest selling commentary of the Bible today. He brought in quite different ideas. And one of them was this orientation now towards, so these born again Christians will come to you in their da'wah. They will tell you, you become Christian, you will actually prosper materially as well in this world. It's better for you in this world. And they're all focused towards that as well. So anyway, the point being, we're surrounded by this culture of just completely sort of insurance on everything, Everything that you can possibly imagine, now you can get insurance. In fact, they say, you can get insurance on anything. You can insure yourself against anything you want. There will always be a price that you can pay to insure yourself against anything you can possibly imagine. So that's the complete opposite of tawakkul. I'm not saying that you should not insure yourself against anything, or that you should not plan for anything in the future, or not have any savings. But you see, it's all about the balance of how we live our lives.
But if you say balance, it's difficult, though, isn't it? Because that's the trick, isn't it? Where is the balance going to be, and how do you decide where that balance is? And
it is. It can be tricky, and
but, not just tricky, but you need guidance, isn't it? You need to know, what does Islam say, where is that balance, because we can't work out where that balance is. So
definitely,
especially with this thing of planning and saving, what is the sunnah around? Obviously there are extremes, but where should we be? Is there anything about where that balance is, and how do you decide? Like some people might say, I'm going to buy a property which will be in the future a source of income for me when I'm old and can't work. But that's obviously buying something for 20, whoever knows how many years ahead.
Yes.
Is that an extreme? Or many people do it?
Yeah, I think that's an extreme.
So, but how do you know? Why is that?
I'm going to take a position now.
But this is what I mean. Where would you put that extreme, and why are you saying that's an extreme? And what criteria?
But that's an extreme because, like you said, that's first of all, you're thinking 20 years ahead. You could die tomorrow. What we need to think is what we've done for the akhirah first. It's more important than what we've done for our dunya. Is what have we done for the akhirah? If you're happy you've done plenty for the akhirah, then fine, build the house for 20 years' time. But have we done enough for our akhirah? Have we even fulfilled the things that are fard upon us? Forget about nafal and sunnah. I'm talking about fard. What are fard? What are the fard kifayat? Are they being fulfilled? If not, then we are all sinful. And the fard kifayat are not being fulfilled. So therefore, forget about all those things, about 20 years time, where you're going to be. Trust me, forget about it. Just trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just focus on now what we need to do for the sake of Allah, what we need to do for the deen, what we need to do to fulfill the fard kifayat.
Then that would imply the other end, which is don't plan anything, don't have anything.
No, it's not that. I'm saying plan for a few weeks.
Okay, so why do you say a few weeks then? This is my question.
No, I'm joking slightly there, but
do you know what I mean?
Of course not.
It's because it has a huge impact on even the first question is that
Yeah.
What job shall you do? You know, if you've got the opportunity to do this job or that job or that job, this requires this amount of time. This is this amount of time. You know, you have to make these decisions, and
it has to go to case by case. Everyone's responsibilities are different. Everyone's options are different. So it's not like a general statement you can make. So these are general guidelines. You know, see what I mean? But if people have very specific options, then you know they need to. Well, you know, there are different ways to do it. Obviously, get nasiha from people of knowledge, people you trust. Do istikhara, and then also another way is, you know, try to put yourself in a position of Sahaba. You know, if there was Sahaba was here today, if it wasn't you making this decision, but one of the great Sahaba, what would they do? That can often clarify our thinking quite a lot. You know. Because, you know, of course Shaitan's going to be trying to come and trying to make us, trick us or trap us into worldly things. The vast majority of these cases I've personally found is people are just procrastinating. They're doing things they really know what they should do. But it's just, you know, like I mentioned last time, the story of one brother, and no one knows who he is, so it's not, you know, I've forgotten who he is myself now, but some years ago, he used to call me, you know, every 6 months or every year. I would get this phone call from this guy. I never met him. He would be asking me about studying in Syria and saying, look, I think I really need to go and study and learn the deen. But I've got this, you know, I think I should finish my degree. And then after a couple of years, it was, I've just got married now, so I think I better just settle down a little bit first. And then it's like, I've got a kid now. It kept going. Literally for years, this guy was phoning me. And in the end, you know, he kept saying, what do you advise, what do you advise? And in the end, I just started saying to him, no, I advise you leave everything and go now, study. But he still didn't. He didn't go, you know. So this is one of those things, I mean, I think mostly people really know what they need to do. But it can be tricky, definitely. It can be very tricky.
I mean, my feeling is that, this is what you're saying is actually correct, which is that we've got ourselves so worked up into a false intellectual construct about what life is, and we're trying to then pick at some of these guidance to say, oh, where will it fit into what I believe is right? And what you need is to actually, although it's extremely difficult, to just try and wipe the slate clean and go into a desert for 6 months or something, and then the eyes will be open to what life is really all about. Then you can make your mind up. But it's very difficult to it's just very difficult to get outside of that mindset which has been created by years of habitual living in the Western world. And and then when somebody says something which is like going in the desert, for example, you just feel that's too extreme. It can't be applicable to me. So it's very, then maybe this is what the brothers that you were saying has happened to him. He just feels that practice is not possible because of the mindset he's in. So if somebody gives him even the right, correct guidance, he finds it very difficult to follow it. And
I think an easier principle would be, don't take any decision that's detrimental to your deen or your akhirah.
But that's not so easy to answer though.
No, it is. I mean, if for example, I know one brother who got a job as a stockbroker, and then within 3 months he was in a position where they would go to the pub. He never been to the pub in his life. He's compromising Jummah, and he's handed his notice in and left within the period of weeks. And that was a job that was paying him significantly a lot of money. And he went in with this construct, earn a lot of money, retire, and do stuff for the deen. But getting into that process, he was selling his soul. So he gave his notice in, and he goes, I was in a pub and I would never even contemplate ever going to a pub. And he goes, yeah, for that sake of the job and to network and that, I was in a job, and then he's compromising his Jummah, and he left. So the guiding principle should be one of anything that's going to be detrimental to my deen or the akhirah. Because you'll always have opportunities, both at work, working a few more hours, and then working a few more hours you're away from your kids and your wife, so that you're away from that family setting, so again you're lacking the barakah there. So
that's a good point, definitely. I think I mean sometimes you can have tricky decisions, but often things are fairly straightforward as well. Can be quite straightforward, but people can definitely have tricky decisions, and then There's things like istikhara, taking nasiha. Often nasiha is a good thing because you someone else can much easier be objective than you yourself can sometimes. That's not normally a good thing to do.
Even, sorry,
Uncle, after you.
from your point of view, even for the money or the saving, the way I think, if you have fulfilled all your obligation according to Deen, and your niyat is right for that, there is no harm in it, and everything is halal, because plenty of money. The same thing you were talking about the job, sometimes you don't take the job. So maybe that if your niyat is right in thinking that God is guiding you, and it is going into your heart that don't take this job, it will not suit you. So if we think like that, which you learn with the age or with the knowledge, then plenty of things get solved. So like now at this age, I think those people who have balanced their life, Deen and Dunya, they are much more successful in spite of the society nature, rather than those who have just gone for the worldly thing. And as Shaykh Sahib says, your mental peace is the most important thing. And then as the brother said, your family. Suppose you go whole night and do the duty, you will get a lot of money. But are you fulfilling the obligation of your wife and your children by doing that? So these are the things, basic things. This is how I think. I don't know whether it is correct.
And there's something I was going to add, but I've forgotten now.
I think it's obviously it's beneficial to learn from other people's experiences. Maybe there is no formula. Maybe the people at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they'd ask him, he would tell them, and today we've got a limited number of knowledgeable, scholarly people who understand the reality of the situation where you are, and sometimes it's hard to get good. Like some people are very active in Islamic work and dawah activities and Islamic learning, but they appear to have neglected their families and their children have gone astray, and things happen like this, which
that will come down to niyyah, you see, often as well. A lot of people involved in so-called dawah, it depends on their intentions. My sincere belief is if someone was sincerely doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it would not be detrimental to him, his family or anything. Because ultimately, the rectification of our children, for example, is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter what we do. It's one of those things that's just such a complex issue that it's really out of our hands. We have to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. The other thing is, the Quran describes two groups of believers. There are those who struggle and strive in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mujahideen, and there are those who sit. It's literally, those who are qa'ideen, those who sit. And the Quran describes that, there's mujahideen and there's qa'ideen. Those who go out and struggle and strive in the path of Allah, and there are always going to be a small group of the ummah. And there's qa'ideen, those who sit. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't warn them with punishment or anything. This is the interesting thing. He says, for both of them there is good. For both there is good in the akhirah. But the people who struggle and strive, the mujahideen, they have a rank far above those who simply sit. So I think this is something really important that we recognize. This is what the Quran says, that not everyone is always going to be someone who's going to give everything up and strive and struggle for this deen, but there has to always be a group from the ummah that do that, and there always will be. So those people who aren't going to do that, I think it is also important to note that we do want Muslims who are successful and wealthy. Not necessarily we want all of our community to be people who are poor, without any money, sitting at home. Because as long as they are then giving their wealth to support the deen, we're more than happy and overjoyed if Muslims have got millions of pounds and savings, as long as they are giving some of that to support the work of the deen and the people who are struggling and striving for this deen. That's the key, and that's always been the case from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ was exhorting the Sahaba to give in the path of Allah their wealth. And the Quran has just got so many ayahs of the Quran that are talking about giving your wealth to support this deen. So it just shows that the jihad, the struggle or the work of the deen, has always been supported by the members of the community giving their wealth. From the first beginning of Islam. From the jihad that went against the Romans, when people like Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu were giving 100 camels fully loaded, and then another 100, then another 100. This was always the case, that people were giving their wealth. So yeah, good. Like the uncle was saying, if people are fulfilling their obligations, there's no harm in working and getting as much money as is halal for you. And if you have that intention that you're going to also be supporting the work of the deen with that portion of that money, then that's brilliant. People should do that. As long as, like everyone has said, it doesn't interfere with your obligations, your Jumu'ah, your obligations to your family, then by all means people should try to make money. But this is why I said it's a case to case, because different people have different responsibilities. If Shaykh Thaqib came to me and said, I'm thinking I should become a stockbroker because I can make a lot of money, I'll say to him, forget it. Because you're an alim who spent many years studying, go and spend your time teaching people the deen. Whereas if someone else came to me who's not an alim, who hasn't studied, and they're a pious Muslim, and he said to me, look, I've got an opportunity to work in this job, get loads of money, I'll say, yeah, by all means go ahead and do it, but make sure you're giving some of your money to support the different dawah and the different things that are going on, the work for this deen that's going on. Jazakallah khair for everyone. Thinking, inshallah, the discussion has helped. Hopefully people clarify things as well. We've got to remember, in this deen there's many different people within the community. Not everyone needs to be a scholar, not everyone needs to be not everyone needs to be doing the same thing. We need people of all different people within the community that will contribute towards the work, the jihad that has to take place.
Hence why, just in that, Imam Ghazali gives the example of the baker. If there's no baker, then that role becomes first kafaya in the community.
Exactly, yeah. It becomes, if there was no one to make bread in this community, it would become a fard kifaya. We would all be sinful. That's what I was trying to say about fard kifayat. There are certain things, these are things I think that we neglected, and that we have to think about as an ummah. So what are those things which are fard kifayat, and how do we go about trying to fulfill them as a community? The wealthy people of this community should be funding schools like this that we're trying to set up. There should be funding for us to have scholars that are teaching our children Quran and Tajweed and Aqeedah and Fiqh and all these things. There have to be people that are funding all of the various aspects of what is fard kifaya. I mean, the word jihad, people hesitate to use that nowadays because obviously of the massive negative publicity about this one particular word, jihad. People are even scared to use the word anymore, but it's actually one of the highest concepts within our deen, and we can't just put that word aside. It doesn't just connote physical fighting. Jihad is a struggle with our resources, with our wealth, our lives, for the struggle for this deen, to establish this deen. It's a struggle to support truth against falsehood. At its very, very deepest level, it's truth against falsehood. So our jihad here is not a physical jihad of the sword; it's an intellectual jihad and a cultural jihad that we have to be supporting. with our time, our effort, our wealth, whatever resources we have. Jihad is the peak of this deen, is the highest level of this deen. وَذِرْوَةُ سَنَامِهِ الْجِهَادِ, the Prophet ﷺ said, the highest peak of this whole affair is jihad. And that's what it means, to struggle and strive. Because there was jihad in Mecca as well, even before the sword was legislated. This is what Shaykh al-Buti Hafidhahullah has shown in one of his books, Al-Jihad fil Islam. He very clearly shows ayahs of Quran that were revealed in Mecca that mentioned jihad before the sword was legislated. So jihad was taking place in Mecca. In Mecca it was da'wah. Our scholars used to say this is an ummah of jihad. It's actually one of the defining features of this ummah of jihad. So we can't discard that term, no matter how much pressure is put on us as a community that this word has to leave. And this is a historical thing as well. Don't forget the British, in their days of their British Empire, one of their specific mission was to remove the doctrine of jihad from this deen. And many people say that's how the Ahmadiyya movement and these type of movements were started, supported by the British, because one of the very prominent things you find amongst them is there's no jihad. So this is something that the enemies of Islam have often and long tried to do, is to just remove this doctrine from our teaching, but they can't. وعن أويس القرني أنه قال وعن الحسن لعن الله أقواما أقسم لهم ربهم فلم يصدقوه. Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala curses a people, or it could be read, may Allah curse a people. I'm not sure how it's to be read here. How is your translated, by the way?
Was it the...
Al-Hasan said about curse of Allah?
We were told that may Allah curse any groups of people on whom the Lord swears an oath, yet they do not believe Him.
Yeah, so he's put may Allah curse, but it could be read also Allah curses, depends. It's impossible to tell here.
It's like a wish to Allah. He's saying like a wish, may Allah.
May Allah, so it's like it could be read that way. لَعَنَ اللَّهُ قَاقْوَامًا. May Allah curse a people that He has promised them something, or He has made an oath about something, and they still didn't believe it. فَوَرَبِّ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ إِنَّهُ لَحَقٌّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made an oath upon the fact that He's given the rizq. وقالت الملائكة عند نزول هذه الآية فورب السماء والأرض هلكت بنو آدم أغضبوا الرب حتى أقسم لهم على أرزاقهم. So I don't know the source of this particular narration, but Imam al-Ghazali mentions that when this ayah came down, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this oath, فَوَرَبِّ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ, that the malaika in response, they said, the children of Adam are destroyed. They have made their Lord so angry that He has had to make this oath. In other words, their iman has been so weak, They have so not trusted in the rizq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the point when Allah actually made this oath to them, that they could have no doubt whatsoever, that this rizq is going to come to them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وعن أويس القرني أنه قال لو عبدت الله عبادة أهل السماوات والأرض لما تقبل منك حتى تصدقه لما تقبل منك حتى تصدقه. Uwais al-Qarni, Uwais al-Qarni, the famous person who was alive at the time of the Prophet ﷺ but didn't actually meet him. But the Prophet ﷺ told some of the Sahaba about him, like Sayyidina Ali and Sayyidina Umar, that when you meet this man, ask him to make dua. He was prevented from coming to see the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because he had to take care of his mother, who was old and ill, etc. So, a beautiful illustration there of the obligations, how we prioritize our different obligations. If your elderly mother or sick mother needs you, that's an overriding obligation that overcomes many other things. Yeah. So he didn't even go to see the Prophet ﷺ, even though he could have, because of that obligation towards his mother.
Is he the one exception that has the status of Sahaba, despite I'm not saying eyes on him?
Yeah, why does he have that?
Because he went to see Rasul ﷺ, but he had to be back to see his mother at a certain time. And when he had left, Rasul ﷺ inquired about him. And then they were, the two of the Sahaba were asked to go and get dua from him.
Yeah, he might, maybe. I mean, he didn't actually become Sahabi, but maybe he had the status of Sahaba. I remember hearing that.
He's the only exception to that rule where there's three conditions: the die with Iman, and also setting eyes on you, and being in a state of Iman at the time.
Yeah. So, Uwais al-Qarni, a lot of then sort of stories gathered around about him, so some of those hadiths they are sahih, definitely, that he was Prophet ﷺ asked him, told him, asked him to make dua, they are sahih. But there's then many other stories that gathered around his thing. He became like a legendary figure almost later on, especially amongst the people of Tasawwuf and so on.
So Shaykh, so was he a Sahaba?
I don't know, Allah Alim. Maybe whether some people may say
mostly people say that he's like a tabi, highest rank of the tabi, because he is yara to the Sahaba. And as you said that when he came to Hajj, and Hazrat Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he saw him and he asked about him, and he said, yeah, I am your Uwais. And then he requested him for dua, and now then he come to know that he is the Uwais.
Yeah. So yeah, Jazakallah khair. So it's narrated here from one Uwais al-Qarni that he said, if you were to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of the worship of the people of the heavens and the earth, it would not be accepted from you unless you believe him believe him. قيل وكيف تصدقوا? They said, how? What do you mean believe him? Believe him. قال تكون آمنا بما تكفل الله لك من أمر رزقك. He said you have to believe in that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guaranteed for you from your rizq. وترى جسدك فارغا لعبادته. So that you will then see that your body is there for worshipping your Lord. Because obviously the tension here is between ibadah and being excessively involved in trying to acquire your dunya. That's the tension that we have to. So the more that someone has this tawakkul, the more he has the tawakkul, the less he's going to be excessively worried. I have to save up for the next 20 years. I need to think about when I'm going to retire. Once again, I'm not saying don't put money into a pension, for example. But what I'm saying is, don't think to yourself, I have to work really hard for 5 years and buy a house, another property, to set aside for when I retire. You see, there's two different things. Putting money aside for a pension is not something you're going to be spending under excessive time, and because something that's just going to be done from your salary, So that's fine. That's I don't think the Deen is against that. Although, would Sayyidina Abu Bakr have done that? I doubt it. Allahu Alim. But should I work really hard for 5 years, save up enough money to buy a house so I can have that as when I retire? Definitely, I would say that's going too far. If it's going to affect your ibadah, obviously, if it's going to affect your ibadah. If it means you're going to do less ibadah, you're worshipping of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by worshipping of Allah, we don't just mean, obviously, your prayers, etc. But I mean, like I said before, it's all of those things which are obligatory upon us. Because that's ubudiyah, is to fulfill the things which are obligatory first. Like I was saying last week, which people may have thought slightly controversial, there's no point in someone going for Hajj every year. Going for Hajj year after year after year, when there's much, if that money he's using, those several £1,000s, could be used to fulfill some of the things which are fard kifayat within the community. That's actually a selfish thing to do, if those other things are being neglected. If he's so extremely wealthy that he's giving a lot of wealth for those fard kifayat, and he still can go for Hajj, that's fine. But if not, then that's not fine. We really have to, just get out of the mindset of, which obviously the surrounding culture is teaching us to become very, you possess that money that we have, very individualistic, very focused on ownership. Because that's not what Islam teaches us, Let's finish off with the last, just about Uwais al-Qarni. وَلَقَدْ قَالَ لَهُ هَرَمْ بن حيان أَيْنَ تَأْمُرُنِي أَنْ أَقِيمُ. Someone asked him, Uwais al-Qarni, where Haram, كيف المعيشة بها? So the man, his student, asked him, what's it like living there? What's the livelihood, etc. قال أف لهذه القلوب لقد خالطها الشك فما تنفعها الموئذة. So Uwais al-Qarni said, Uff, these people nowadays, or these hearts, these people nowadays, doubt has crept in, doubt has mixed into people. So, exhortations are of no use for them. Doubt has mixed in. In other words, not having that full tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to have tawakkul upon Him and to trust in Him for our rizq, and to give us a correct understanding of the deen, and to take out love of the worldly pleasures from our hearts, and make us people who love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and strive and struggle for the akhirah. جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ما هو أهله. جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ما هو أهله. جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ما هو أهله. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين.